Good afternoon. Today is the 23rd of August 2022. Welcome to Lunchtime News here on TV1 for the News First team, where the people come first. I'm Senitha Senanayaka. Before we take a look at the stories in detail, let's take a look at the headlines. Sri Lanka's July inflation hits over 66%. Prevention of Terrorism Act to be given a new face.
නව පනතක් ලෙස ඉදිරිපත් කරන බව අධිකරණ ඇමතුමා දැනුම් දුන්නා.
United Kingdom concerned over the use of PTA. Egg shortage in Sri Lanka. Information about hoarding reported. Sri Lanka must make a threat assessment for Gotabaya Rajapaksa to return, says the Human Rights Commission. On to your top story this afternoon. Sri Lanka's inflation in July 2022 under the National Consumer Price Index on a year-on-year basis rose to 66.7%. This is the highest inflation rate ever recorded in Sri Lanka.
Accordingly, the year-on-year inflation of food increased to 82.5% in July from 75.8% in June. The relevant report notes that the rise in prices of milk powder, rice, fresh fish and chicken are the contributing factors for this. The year-on-year inflation of non-food items increased to 52.4% in July from 43.6% in June. Monthly change of NCPI recorded at 5.57% in July 2022 due to price increases observed in items of both food and non-food categories, which were 2.42% and 3.15% respectively. Accordingly, within the food category, increases were observed in prices of milk powder, rice, fresh fish, biscuits and chicken. However, prices of vegetables, coconut oil and coconut decreased during the month. Further, within the non-food category, increases were observed in prices of transport, furnishing, household equipment and routine household maintenance and housing, water, electricity, gas and other fuel subcategories during the month.
The latest World Bank assessment for August 2022 says that Sri Lanka ranks 5th, only behind Lebanon, Zimbabwe, Venezuela and Turkey, with the highest food price inflation in the world. The World Bank's latest food security update states that domestic food price inflation remains high around the world, with high inflation continuing in almost all low and middle income countries and the share of high income countries, with high inflation increasing sharply. Moving on, organizations for the protection of poultry farmers say they are ready to reveal information on an egg mafia. Eggs can be sold for a price lower than this. To do that, the required corn must be imported. Import the byproducts of soy. Import the required amounts of medicine. Create a network where those materials are distributed among small and medium-scale farmers in a fair manner. There is a mafia in this industry. After a certain group control this supply chain and sell eggs for extreme prices, the small and medium-scale farmers are adversely affected. Farmers cannot sell eggs for 45 to 46 rupees. If the cost per egg is 53 rupees, if the price is 45 rupees, there is a loss of 8 rupees. Farmers cannot incur this cost anymore. According to the calculations of the Department of Animal Produce and Health for the month of June, the cost of eggs is at 45 rupees and 95 cents. Do not allow for what we built thus far to be destroyed. We are suspicious as to whether they are creating these problems and trying to import eggs. Farmers allege that with the creation of a control price for eggs, a shortage of artificial eggs has emerged in the market. I came to purchase eggs, but there aren't any eggs to buy. They are telling us to consume nutritious food, but there are no eggs to purchase. Egg retailers say they refrain from buying eggs because they cannot trade at a loss. We sell eggs at 52 rupees. They tell us to sell, but we cannot. We will be helpless if the Consumer Affairs Authority raid us. Egg suppliers say they are incurring heavy losses by selling eggs that are purchased at higher prices at the control price. Ministry of Trade, Industry and Food Security Nalin Fernando says raids are being conducted to trace vendors who are selling eggs at higher prices. However, Union of Organizations for the Protection of Poultry Farmers point out that the imposed maximum retail price is not practical. Fishermen engaged in protests demanding the government to reduce the price of kerosene.
Sri Lankan fishermen have been protesting against the recent kerosene price hike. Today, fishermen joined the protest in Payagala and march against the government's decision. Reverend Father Malaka Silva, the parish priest of Payagala, told reporters that the local fishermen have not been able to engage in their trade due to the increasing cost. He said if the cost of kerosene increases, the price of fish products will also increase.
Sri Lanka's Cabinet of Ministers granted approval to prepare the budget estimates for the next year aimed at increasing state revenue.
Cabinet spokesperson Minister Bandula Gunawardena told the weekly cabinet briefing on Tuesday that in order to increase state revenue, necessary measures need to be taken on a priority basis. He said there will be a need to reform state enterprises and restructure loss-making state institutions. He warned that some of the loss-making state-owned enterprises will have to be closed down or will have to be reformed. If not, it would not be possible to continue with the operations of the state.
Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena expressed the following views regarding cooperative entities. I don't think the government has closed down any government office or provincial offices, but the decision of closing down or any sort of thing has to be decided after the budget, because we have to focus on more than the government offices to cut down expenditure of government departments and corporations. All these provincial reports have proved that the cooperatives are dying slowly. It is not the government officers who oversee these cooperatives. Members from villages are in it. Some are manufacturing corporations and others are distributing corporations. These corporations are very important as we have identified these are the ones which brings life to these villages. The Prime Minister expressed these views during a meeting held with provincial governors at the office of the Secretary to the Prime Minister in Colombo. Cabinet attention was drawn to provide vouchers for school uniforms from the year 2024.
දෙදස් විසිතුන වර්ෂය සඳහා පාසල් සිසුන්ට නිල ඇඳුම් සැපීම සම්බන්ධයෙන් මේ නිල ඇඳුම් අවශ්‍යතාවයෙන් යම්කිසි ප්‍රමාණයක්.
Regarding providing school uniforms for school students for the year 2023, the Chinese government is donating some of these school uniforms to Sri Lanka under the request made by the Sri Lankan government, and the remaining uniforms will be manufactured by local garments. That was the cabinet decision. The cabinet ministers decided that at least from next year onwards to release a voucher for students to buy these school uniform materials, that is for 2024.
යනාදී කාර්යවල මතුවෙන විවිධ ප්‍රශ්න සලකලා බලලා රෙදි අවශ්‍ය ප්‍රමාණය මිලදී ගැනීමට ප්‍රමාණවත් මුදල් වවුචරයක් ලබා දුන්නොත් වඩා ප්‍රායෝගිකයි කියන එක තමයි අදහස වුණේ. ඒ 2023 වර්ෂයේ නෙමෙයි 24 වර්ෂයට.
The United Kingdom High Commission in Colombo says it is concerned about reported use of the Prevention of Terrorism Act. It added that the PTA is seen as inconsistent with respect for human rights. The United Kingdom urges authorities to stand by their commitments to stop its use. In more news, Sri Lanka is to rename the controversial Prevention of Terrorism Act. According to Cabinet spokesperson and Minister Dr. Bandula Gunawardena, the Prevention of Terrorism Act, which has been in existence since the 1970s, will be given a new phase. He said the Justice Minister will introduce a new act named the National Security Act to replace the Prevention of Terrorism Act, where regulations under the PTA will be relaxed. In more news, the Students' Union of the Peradeniya University points out that an individual under the custody of the police has the right to appear in court. After the Sri Lanka police arrests a person they identify as a terrorist, the matter must be under the supervision of the court. However, this has allowed the executive to do anything it pleases. How can they identify the Aragale activists who fought for the people of this country as terrorists? As soon as Ranil Wickremesinghe was appointed, a special representative was appointed to the Occupy Galle protest site. Therefore, Ranil Wickremesinghe is the first person who aided this so-called terrorism. Former JVP parliamentarian Sunil Handunnetti says the current government cannot fulfill the aspirations of the people as it does not have the mandate of the people. He expressed these views at a rally held in Tambuttegama.
They
know if they contest in an election, at least 3 out of that 150 group of MPs will not be elected. They are focused on remaining in power, regardless of the depriving state of the people. Ranil was chosen as the leader by a group of crooks who were rejected by the people. He is not the leader of the people. In order to put a stop to corruption and bribery, law enforcement agencies must do their duties. But how is the law being in generation who launched the massive revolution and the people struggle? The youth hope for a system change and the government is hunting them through the Prevention of Terrorism Act. So far, the President and the government have taken measures to issue detention orders under the Prevention of Terrorism Act against Wasantha Mudalige and others. Is this how the youth of the country is being treated? When someone takes to the streets, expressing their views, joins a meeting, speaks for what they believe in, is it terrorism? The government must withdraw from state terrorism immediately. Stop using the Prevention of Terrorism Act to hunt the youth of the country.
මේ රජයට අපි කියන්න කැමති වහාම රාජ්‍ය ත්‍රස්තවාදයෙන් ඉවත් වෙන්න. වහාම රාජ්‍ය හිංසනයෙන් ඉවත් වෙන්න. ත්‍රස්තවාදයේ වැළැක්වීමේ පනත උපයෝගී කරගෙන මේ රටේ තාරුණ්‍ය දඩයම් කිරීම වහාම නතර කරන්න.
Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa expressed these views while attending a discussion on youth reforms held yesterday at the opposition leader's office in Colombo.
The Colombo Magistrates Court on Tuesday the 23rd issued a warrant for the arrest of Dr. Pathum Kerner, a member of the Aragale protests, for failing to appear in court.
Colombo Additional Magistrate Harshana Kakunuvela issued the arrest warrant when the case relating to the protest that took place at the Poldua Junction in Pathramulla on the 13th of July 2022 was taken up in court. Dr. Pathum Kerner is out on bail with regard to the case, failed to appear in court today when the matter was called up, and thus an arrest warrant was issued to arrest him and produce him in court. The Colombo Crimes Division informed the court that public assistance is sought to identify 50 individuals who are suspected to have been part of the protest that took place at the Poldua Junction in Pathramulla on the 13th of July 2022. The CCD also told the court that further investigations are taking place on the instructions of the Attorney General. The Colombo Additional Magistrate ordered for the case to be called up again on the 29th of November.
On to a headline-making story, the Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka said that ex-President Gotabaya Rajapaksa is entitled to certain privileges and benefits as a former president established under law. It adds that it received complaints alleging that Gotabaya Rajapaksa and his family, who are citizens of this country, are unable to return to the country due to prevailing threats to their lives.
The Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka, in a letter to President Ranil Wickremesinghe, recommended that the government of Sri Lanka takes all necessary steps to assess the threat situation and provide the ex-president with security provided under the law for an ex-president to return to the country whenever he makes such a request. It added that the family of Gotabaya Rajapaksa, now living abroad, is entitled to the protection of the law to a safe return to the country. The Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka recommends that the government of Sri Lanka provide adequate protection to the family of Gotabaya Rajapaksa to return to the country. HRCSL said law enforcement officials of Sri Lanka should assess the threat situation that would affect the violation of the fundamental rights of Gotabaya Rajapaksa and his family now living abroad to return to the country and take all reasonable and appropriate means to prevent and or remedy such infringements within the framework of the law of Sri Lanka and permit their safe return to the country.
In more local news, a wanted criminal identified as W.K. Samira Sampath Fernando, also known as Ha Samira, was arrested by the Police Special Task Force in Minuangoda.
Sri Lanka police said that Hal Samira was involved in amassing massive quantities of rice from producers and issuing false checks. The 36-year-old suspect from Negombo is linked to multiple financial scams and racketeering. 2 Italian-made revolvers, a Chinese-made shotgun, and various types of ammunition were discovered following a search of the suspect's house. He was handed over to the Minuangoda police for further investigations.
Sri Lanka's Ministry of Transport and Highways is exploring the possibility of launching an electric bus service in the country. A preliminary level discussion took place at the Transport Ministry on Monday the 22nd with UNDP representatives.
The United Nations Development Programme has decided to extend its supports towards electrical three-wheelers and buses in Sri Lanka in order to reduce the effect of the fuel crisis and the harmful impact of fossil fuel use on environment. Under the e-mobility programme implemented as a pilot project of UNDP, it is expected to convert 300 three-wheelers to run on electric power this year and prepare a system for that. The UNDP has allocated $1 million for the project. The Government Information Department said that the discussion focused on the possibility of converting the three-wheelers in Sri Lanka to run on electricity. The United Nations Development Programme has allocated $3 million for the entire project.
2 people were killed in Sri Lanka within the past 24 hours over the human-elephant conflict.
A 49-year-old father of one who was protecting his crops was killed in a wild elephant attack in Andaravava, Polonnaruwa. Another wild elephant attack was reported from Galenbindunwava, where a 58-year-old father of 3 was killed. His family was concerned after he did not return home from the cultivations, and a search led to the discovery of his body. The carcass of a wild elephant was discovered behind a chena cultivation in Sigiriya. Wildlife officers believe the pachyderm may have roamed into nearby villages from the Digampataha Teak Reserve. Samples were obtained and sent to the Ginitale Wildlife Division for test. Wildlife officers suspect that the wild elephant may have died due to electrocution. A 40-year-old wild elephant was run down by a cargo train plying from Batiklo to Colombo. It is reported that the wild elephant attempted to cross the tracks from the Min Area Forest Reserve when the tragic accident took place.
A clean drinking water project for the students of Periyasandi Primary School in Kalpitiya was declared open today by Gammatha.
The Periyasandi Primary School in Kalpitiya provides education to over 130 students from all communities in both Sinhala and Tamil. The students who were compelled to consume saline water will now be able to access clean drinking water. Gammatha is humbly proud to bring joy to these faces through this project. Under the monetary donation made by Musin family, this project was launched last February. The donation was given in memory of A.R.M. Mushin, Khairun Nisha Mushin and Shiana Mushin.
Gammatha Clean Drinking Water Project is now providing water to an entire village in Ridimaliyadda Mahiyangana.
The Orubandi Vava in Ridimaliyadda is a very remote village in the Badulla district, and despite having a water purification system, the wells in the area did not contain any water. Gammatha was supported by Piodel to provide drinking water daily for these people.
As a Sri Lankan, I believe that I need to support the people living in the Ridimaliyadda, the village, a remote village in Badulla. Since last year, we spent over 100,000 rupees to daily supply water using bowsers to the village. Even school children come to the location to obtain clean drinking water because it is so scarce.
In addition, measures were taken to deliver clean drinking water using bowsers to the Pathumpura village. ඔරු බැඳී වැව ඉන්දු
Pakistan's police have charged the country's former Prime Minister Imran Khan under anti-terror laws.
Their investigation comes after he accused the police and judiciary of detaining and torturing a close aide. Khan's supporters gathered outside his house vowing to take over if he was arrested. However, he has now been granted pre-arrest bail until Thursday. Since being ousted from power in April, Khan has been a vocal critic of the government and the country's army. Police announced the charges after the cricketer turned politician accused authorities of torturing his close aide, who himself is being detained under sedition charges. Officials accuse Khan of breaching the country's Anti-Terrorism Act for allegedly making threats against state officials.
Former US President Donald Trump has asked a judge to freeze the Justice Department's investigation of files seized from his Mar-a-Lago home.
In a lawsuit, his legal team asked that an independent lawyer be appointed to oversee the documents that FBI agents looked earlier this month. According to the FBI, 11 sets of classified files were taken from Trump's Florida estate on the 8th of August. Trump is being investigated for potentially mishandling documents. US presidents must transfer all their documents and emails to a government agency called the National Archive, and the FBI is investigating whether Trump improperly handled records by taking them from the White House to Mar-a-Lago after he left office. He has denied any wrongdoing and has said the items were declassified.
Young Sri Lankan fighters who took part in the International Federation of Muay Thai Association's Youth World Championships arrived in the country today.
The Youth World Muay Thai Championships 2022, organized by the International Federation of Muay Thai Associations, was held in Malaysia. More than 800 up-and-coming fighters from 101 countries took part in the championships. Two Sri Lankan fighters, Basham Murtaza and Marim Murtaza, also took part in the tournament. 8-year-old Basham Murtaza is the youngest contender to take part in the championship. He was able to secure a gold medal at the Muay Thai dance event and a silver at the one-on-one bouts.
I'm Bassam Murtaza and I'm 9 years old. I'm very happy to participate in this IFMA Youth World Championship in Malaysia 2022. I had a great experience. It's a very great achievement for my country.
Marim Murtaza was able to secure a bronze at the championship.
I have won 2 medals for Sri Lanka. And I'm so happy. I thank my coach, Mohammed Fahid, and my parents and my family. And I thank the people who supported me a lot.
And that brings us to the end of this edition of Lunchtime News here on TV1. For more details on these stories, you can log on to our website at www.newsfirst.lk. For the News First team, where the people come first, I've been Sanita Senanayaka. Take care and stay safe.
ඇත්ත කෙටියෙන් දත්ත වැඩියෙන් සයිබර් අවකාශයේ කලබන වුවත් සලකුණ News First YouTube channel අදම subscribe කරන්න. News First ජනතාව සමග